You got an 11. Okay, very good. Okay, hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 203rd Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. Today, our topic involves the recent Supreme Court hearings, Supreme Court rulings, and we've asked our panelists, which unfortunately right now is only 3 of us. I will fill in as a panelist. We'll pick a Supreme Court ruling and give our opinions and ask others to chip in. So we will start off with Dr. Ronald Chamberlin. Ron, fire away.
Okay, thank you, John. Yeah, I have chosen to discuss Roe versus Wade, the recent Supreme Court decision about abortion. And there are 2 things I'm not going to really touch. And one is the religious aspect of it. I don't care whether you're pro-life or pro-choice, that's up to you. As long as you don't try to make your decision on religious basis part of the law of the land. You have no right to do that under a constitution. Secondly, I do not vilify any particular members of the Supreme Court. There are a number of those folks that I don't particularly care for, but I'm not going to engage in an ad hominem attack and talk mainly really about the legality of what they did or the legal background of what they did and what I feel might be the ramifications of that. So looking at it, several of the people has been pointed out in their confirmation hearing said that they would uphold stare decisis, the established law, but they did not do that in a case of Roe v. Wade. On the other hand, they did also not do that in Brown versus the Board of Education. And that was based also on the 14th Amendment, which talks about the rights of the citizens. I looked it up and it has it has 4 different parts of that amendment, and that's the first one. So I'm not a legal scholar. I don't know what how that boiled down, but obviously it's important for people who change their minds for good reason to be able to act on it. In the case of the Supreme Court, that means they can revert an earlier decision if they find it's legally necessary to do so. Okay, so where does that leave us? That leaves us with a hodgepodge of regulations in the various states. So my main, as a liberal, I would certainly prefer to see this on a nationwide basis, to make a uniform ruling that accomplishes as fair as possible. I think it originally did that, as does Brown versus Board of Education did that. That's my feeling as in my political stance. However, we're faced with now back to individual statewide decisions. And one of the problems with the Supreme Court decision and things like Ohio with their heartbeat regulation, they lack compassion for the condition of the individuals involved. Just a paper today, there's reported a case with a 15-year-old girl who was 2 days past the 6 weeks basis, and she's reports being raped by a relative, so she can't get an abortion in Ohio. Maybe they'll take her to Pennsylvania. And this is going to impact, and people are pointing out all the statistics on this in terms of maternal and infant mortality and health. It's particularly impactful on the poorer populations, especially those of color, populations of color. And there's no provision at the moment to increase care for newborns or prenatal care, making medications, vitamins available at good prices, and again, making contraception available and good sex education in schools. These have all been proven to decrease the abortion rate, decrease the pregnancy rate by telling people what's going on and getting some commitment to changing their habits. So I don't know where it's all going to go. There are certainly states that make it impossible to get an abortion, even in the cases of incest or rape. Not all of them. There are people banding together now to provide funds and transportation. There's been recently quite a number of national corporations have decided that they will give financial support to people who need to go travel out of state or travel away to get this procedure. There is the mail order pills that one can get, and there's discussions about how that will play out in a place like Ohio that's not yet illegal, but it can come. This ability was lost, and there at least one member of the Supreme Court is saying, well, we ought to look at contraception and same-sex marriage again, see how that goes. So there are dangers out there. And I think us people who believe in the autonomy of individuals, their ability to make their own life and health decisions is at risk. And whether you're pro-choice or pro-life, and I find myself pro-choice in this matter, though I don't really like abortion, the idea of abortion. I grew up, John, pretty much the same as you and Patty have done, and where the group that I belong to, the religious group I belong to, banned it, and the one I belong to now is formally against that. But in most cases, I think in all of these groups, a lot of people opt for, say, well, this is a personal decision, and it has the doctrinal dictum have really no bearing on my case here. And I think that can be a slippery slope indeed, but I think that's probably what drives the thinking of most folks, or many folks at least. And certainly it's reported that majority of individuals in the country did not want Roe v. Wade to be abolished. So do what you feel best, but don't make it a law for me. You have no right under our Constitution to do that so far. They can attack this, the 14th Amendment, they can attack anything, so go.
Patty, Ron pretty much covered the waterfront. Would you like to respond to him?
Yeah, I am pro-life. I'm probably the only pro-life Democrat running around here. But I have, concerns about the ruling because, even if you're coming from the pro-life standpoint, it did not completely ban abortion. As Ron said, it passed it back to the states. So they really, and unfortunately, in my mind, the problem with placing it back in the states is that it says basically that if you're rich and you can afford it, you'll still be able to get an abortion. But if you're poor, you may not be able to, because you may not be able to travel 3 states over in order to obtain an abortion. Now, again, I'm opposed to abortion. I just don't like this way of handling it. It's not going to completely remove abortion from this country. I just heard President Biden speak this morning saying that it's his intention to try to codify Roe v. Wade, and which would require a change in the filibuster rules to do it within with our representatives and with our Senate. And that's a possibility. So this ruling may end up actually could end up making abortion more available to people within the country. So, like I said, I had mixed feelings on this because
I have a question for you, Patty. I'm not sure I know what it means to codify. What does that mean exactly?
Enact a law, put it into law. Part of the code, basically,
Okay. Well, what all would
right now there is no law that says, Roe v. Wade was part of a lawsuit coming out of Texas that went to the Supreme Court, and they made a ruling. But our legislature has the ability to place into law the right to have an abortion, and then can set various limits on it, or non-limits, whatever the case may be. They could set up one that says you can have an abortion if it's a case of incest or if it's a case of rape. They could set the number of weeks, but to make it a national law, as opposed to allowing individual states to make up their own laws, like the one in Ohio, like the one in Mississippi, which is the one that went to the Supreme Court. So now, very honestly, I think one of the biggest mistakes that's been made with this is the protests that were going on outside of the Supreme Court justices' homes. I do not agree with that.
Right.
I think they were peaceful. I do not think they were violent, but they shouldn't have been doing that. That was going to do nothing to convince the Supreme Court justices to change their mind. If anything, I think it tended to solidify them. As Ron said, we also have to be careful because we have Justice Thomas, who has stated that he'd like to extend the rulings to include contraceptives, to include gay marriage, a number of different issues. And it would be unfortunate if our Supreme Court decided to take that route and continue down the line. So because of this, it may push, I think, more people within the legislature to try to codify Roe v. Wade so as to not go back onto, because then we become into an issue of personal privacy, which is also an issue here.
So you're not much influenced. You're not much influenced by the fact that the Supreme Court only ruled that this is not constitutionally guaranteed, that abortion is not.
No, it doesn't solve anything.
Doesn't solve anything. Yeah.
No, it doesn't solve anything. There's still going to be this big divide about when abortion is legal and when abortion is not legal. And people are not going to change their minds on those issues. And this doesn't help. It just kind of passes it off, but opens a door to invade people's privacy, and it opens the door to attack other institutions that we have assumed to be legal, such as gay marriage and so forth.
Well, I would like to see a big, serious national push to educate women on how to not get pregnant. I'm not entirely sure that young women totally understand what their options are.
I think they understand, and they know this. You know, unfortunately, what's happening, there's a big push in the schools now not to have sex education, and that this should only be taught at home. And I mean, that is the move now in conservative, with conservative school boards and within various states. So, John, you're saying have more education on this within the schools, and we have a country that is going the other way, saying we'll teach that at home to our kids and tell them what's right and wrong, and then we do run into problems. But
every time I hear someone talk about sex education in school, I remember when I was in high school, we had sex education in the 11th grade. That was in 1956.
Exactly.
As a matter of fact, we even had what do you call it? It was a school trip. I mean, the class all got on buses. We went to the Cleveland Institute of Health, and we had a lot of instruction about pregnancy and venereal disease and so forth. But
we all know that it's needed before 11th grade. Yeah.
We had it. They split us up, boys in one class, girls in another, to have that sex education. But we had it. We did it too.
Yeah, we did. I want to read something. I'm going to inject this right now. I discovered something that was said by Learned Hand. Do you know the name Learned Hand?
Yes, yes.
He was a jurist. He was a very well-known judge, never made it to the Supreme Court, but he did a lot of writing. I'd heard the name before, but didn't really know how he felt about anything. Learned Hand said, "The spirit of liberty is the spirit which is not sure what is right. It is the spirit which seeks to understand the mind of other men and women, and which weighs their interest alongside its own without bias." He said, "Blind, inflexible certitude is deadly to the preservation of democratic freedom."
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, I feel that way too. So I was so impressed by Learned Hand's comments that I just wanted to share them. Patty, you wanted to talk about the main ruling.
Yeah, and I think the main gist of this was that if I understand it correctly, if public money was being given to private charter schools, that the state would therefore have to give money to private religious schools as well. Am I correct on that?
I believe you're right.
Yeah,
right,
it was very specific. And I was really concerned about this because I think, there is a big movement within this country about that state dollars and federal dollars should go with the student to the school they're going to. My concern is when they go to a parochial school of some sort, because I do believe in separation of church and state. Now, please understand, this is from a woman whose son went to a Catholic high school and Catholic college. This is from a woman whose daughter went to a Catholic school from preschool to 8th grade. It's a woman whose daughter-in-law teaches at a parochial school and whose grandsons attend Catholic school. Certainly for all of us, it would have been very helpful to have extra dollars, pay those tuitions that were paid over the years for those kids. However, I strongly believe that that shouldn't be done because I don't think that my dollars, my tax dollars, should go to pay for the religious education of somebody else or religious views that I don't particularly agree with. I do believe they have to be separate. Also, with this type of agreement, what's going to happen is the downgrading of public schools themselves. A Catholic high school, I know when my son went to high school, he had to take a test to get in. He had to score a certain level. His Catholic high school doesn't take everybody. They only take the best. They don't take the students that have physical or mental disabilities. All of these private schools can set their own rules about who goes to their school. Public schools cannot. They take everybody. That's the idea of public school. But what will happen, I think, if we start pushing dollars with the students, all of these kids are going to go to their private school, whether it be a charter school or a parochial school. They will only take the best students, and what will be left in the public schools will be those students that have learning disabilities, those students that have physical disabilities. Now, understand that school districts have a lot of unfunded mandates in taking care of these students. These students are extremely expensive. And the only way public schools are able to afford this is because they have a lot of other students that are there that they're achieving money for. If you take out all of those students and their money goes with them, I do not think that public schools will be able to adequately take care of those students that are in the most need. And they deserve that. So I think this is going to be a problem, and it's going to kill the public school system. And it's in addition, then, is going to affect the education of all of those students that have disabilities, whether physical or mental disabilities that we have. I don't see it as a good sign for students and for our education system.
Yeah.
I've thought about this quite a bit in the past week or so, but I had never even had an inkling that religious schools or any other private school had a choice of students.
Oh, yeah.
But I do remember after the 8th grade at St. Joseph's Catholic School in Cuyahoga Falls, I did take a test to get into St. Mary's, which was a co-ed school at the time. And that, I passed, but then chose not to go there. The public school was just a 10-minute walk. But I had never thought about that part of it before. And that is a compelling argument to me.
Yeah. And a lot of elementary schools, Catholic elementary schools, are in need of students. So they're taking a lot more, it's a little easier to get in, but some are not. Where my grandchildren attend, it's difficult. And in order to be in that school, you have to go to that parish and you have to contribute to that parish.
Yeah, that was true in my upbringing as well. I went to there were two Catholic schools in town, and I went to one because we remember that parish, and that's the way that broke down. Had I chose to go to a Catholic high school, which was in Altoona, PA, a short commute, then I would have had to pay extra tuition. And I'm sure my parents paid tuition. I didn't know anything about that relative to, they paid their taxes that supported public schools, and also I'm sure contributed to the school. I remember lots of bake sales. So, but Patty, I completely agree with you there. I think it is definitely a church to state separation issue, as I had not really considered the idea of how much damage could be done to the financial support of the public school system if this goes ahead. That's very compelling. Yeah.
And I wanted to send my kids to Catholic schools, and I'm glad my grandkids are, but that's my option. And I should not ask you or John or anyone else to pay for my hope that my children received a good religious education. That was my own choice. And I know that was never a popular decision when I was there. And there were times when I was writing out those checks that I wasn't real happy about it. But I think that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
What about the argument when a student goes to a religious school, it relieves the taxpayer of the responsibility of paying for that student's public education? I mean, there seems to be extra money there for something.
Oh, fine. That's a nice donation from the folks that send their kids to Catholic school. So
the school does not get monies for students that are not attending their school. So yes, they're not getting they're not being required to educate that child, but they're also not getting any money for that child.
Yeah.
Well, that's so similar to what happens on the charter schools in a way, isn't it? Because the charter schools are supported financially by tax dollars.
Yeah.
To some extent, at least.
And I strongly believe in, as a teacher, now this is going to sound really biased, but I'm a former school teacher. Catholic school teachers and charter school teachers are not paid near what they are worth. They don't even come close to getting paid what you get paid in a public school. And we talk about the value of teachers. And, as a teacher, I couldn't have supported my family I sent them to Catholic school, but I sure couldn't have supported them by teaching at a Catholic school. Yeah. So, yes, they may be good for education, but unfortunately, I don't think they give enough to their teachers or value them enough to make sure that they have quality people in that job. That's one of the problems with some of the charter schools. They were, when they first came into being, people that were really good teachers couldn't afford to work there, and they could get a job in a public school. So they were kind of not getting the best. And I have to say the exception is my daughter-in-law, who teaches at a Catholic school and happens to be one of the best teachers I've ever seen. So.
Well, I doubt that the public school teachers are overpaid either. No, I have a son who is about 2 years away from retiring as a public school teacher. And he is not going to his villa in the Bahamas to retire.
No. No, but there's a lot of complications with that. So I think, that goes in line. There have been, it's interesting because, you talked about the Supreme Court decisions. There's so many. We had the ruling on the concealed carry guns in New York.
Yeah.
There was just the one, was it yesterday, the day before, about the football coach who wanted to pray in the middle of the field with his team.
Right.
there's one coming up today on, I forget what that one's on. There's a
I
decision.
saw it this morning and I've forgotten too.
Yeah.
We're getting old. I wanted to, in the 2 minutes we've got left, share another thing that I found. There is a Boston Globe journalist by the name of Jeff Jacoby. I think I've heard him. I think I probably saw him on television. He is the one that included the learned hand quotes that I gave you a few minutes ago. And he went on to talk about the spirit of democratic freedom. He went on to say there is virtually no hint of that spirit in our brutal political battles over abortion and guns and so many more hotly contested issues. We have all but forgotten how to reason together, how to compromise, how to keep disagreement from evolving into enmity. Our culture is fraying at the seams and it won't knit itself back together. That's a very pessimistic view of our future.
Yeah.
But I don't know how to argue against it. I think that we have moved in, what with mass media that it is. I don't know how we're going. The media has been talking about Donald Trump since he came down the steps after he announced his candidacy for the presidency. The media made him, mainly because they hated him. I don't know how, unless we do something about controlling the media, which is certainly against our Constitution. Mm-hmm. But yeah. In any event, we sure miss Bryan today. So Bryan, if you're going to listen to this program, we sure missed you.
Always enjoy what you have to say, Bryan.
See you all in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye.